Well, good evening. I'm going to start proceeding with Revelations chapter 12. What you see on the screen is from my book. So I'm going to start by just reading it, reading the verse that doesn't have all the input in it. To really briefly recap, for those coming into this for the first time, the video that talks about Revelation 12:1 indicates that how Doe, in one of the only Bible lessons officially given by T.N. Doe in the 19 years I was with him, and without T present, because that's when it was before T left our vehicle, told us that the Revelation 12:1 woman was referring to T, his older member, his father, his heavenly father, who came incarnate with him, and that was the miracle of it, that the older member, like Doe said, he didn't know why T came, but, well, he didn't know from his perspective whether he needed that help because of how corrupt the world had become under the misinformation mindset of the Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls. What they have been allowed to do by the next level to set up the criteria for the free will choices of all the humans that were deposited with souls, so that they could grow to the next stage in their evolution out of the human kingdom by their will and by adopting all the behaviors and ways of each incarnate member at the time in like a 3-trimester format, to where the T and Doe were the midwives. And Jesus essentially started that graduation process, because before that, before Jesus, graduation wasn't in the cards at all. Wasn't even introduced. Well, except in the way that, well, it was introduced, yes, big time. But there was no capacity for anybody to graduate then. And there was a capacity, I believe, for Jesus' disciples to graduate, and I think a number did, maybe perhaps 12. But that graduation didn't necessarily mean they were graduating to receive an adult next level vehicle, because the next level makes grows on a vine all kinds of vehicles, and they grow them according to the growth and tasks that, which is the same thing, because in the next level, service is the rule. I mean, wanting to have tasks is what everybody wants to do, because it's so fun and pleasing to be active and doing things to contribute to this miraculous opportunity to bring new souls into the next level. So when it says a woman is clothed with the sun, well, clothing to the next level is the physical body they are wearing, and the sun has to do with the light, the ray, and the moon has to do with I think the human kingdom, that you know, that becomes the footstool for both older members to midwife the new graduates. That might include, or that seemed to include also individuals that were given infant vehicles after the Jesus trimester, and so that they could graduate to adult vehicles sometime in the future. Just like when those students, well, Tian-Do students, but the ones that joined the group in 1994, when those students stayed with the program, which is not easy to do, because the next level is trying to actually filter out those that don't have the capacity to go all the way. When that capacity is not necessarily easy to, I mean, it's not predetermined by the next level. Well, I think the next level knows that everybody has the capacity to graduate their trimester. But they know it's going to take more time for some than others. And so because it's their free will, how fast they grow and how fast they conquer the Luciferian, space alien, fallen angel influence on us. And of course, part of that influence, a big part of that influence, is the discarnate world of all the dead humans in the past that bolster up the human kingdom to be what we see the most, which is filled with animal behaviors. But it's not really animal behaviors in the sense that the animals don't have the free will to change those behaviors unless individuals from a level above them take them into their corral and help them grow so that they can grow closer to becoming members of the human kingdom. So Tian-Do said when they first came that this was a time period for all levels of life to grow from. So it's not just a select few that grow, although there is a process and a division of those that can actually make the grade because they had lessons in the past with the older members, and so they were prepared for graduation more than others. Like the individuals that joined after Jesus left were not as prepared to, couldn't graduate because the older member needs to be present for there to be a graduation. Present meaning incarnate. I mean, the older members can be present, from their spacecrafts, or if they wanted to, I guess, in some other capacity, in close range to everybody. But it's going to be a spacecraft because that's how they travel, and that's how their workstations are on spacecrafts, and their computer systems and everything they have. In their labs. So that goes through Revelation 12:1 in a little background. And Revelation 12:2 is, and she being with child, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. So this is showing that there was a birth upcoming. Now this is where, T had said, as I repeated before, that she told Do early on, 1972 or 3, that she came just to get him going, and then she was going back. And Doe didn't understand what that meant because he couldn't imagine that she was going back to her human family. And she wasn't going back to her human family. She never intended to go back to her human family. But she didn't necessarily know, well, I don't know if she knew or not what she was going back to, but she didn't say it that Doe quoted her on. So, because a lot of information is held back on purpose so that they don't get too far ahead of the student body that they're trying to collect. And there's a lot of examples of that, how they didn't know things, and had they known things, had they known the way they were going to exit long ago, even though there was probably some flexibility in that, because the next level always seems to build in flexibility with many things. But to where if they said what they were instructed to say, they said. And so if we look at it in a human way, you would think, well, why wouldn't T explain herself, or why wouldn't Doe explain herself? Well, I had an experience once with T where she said I looked green, and I asked her what that meant. And she said, I don't know, you just look green. So I didn't, try to dig into more of what she was saying, because she answered her question. If she had more to say about it, she would have said more about it. And for me to continue to ask her more detailed questions like, well, does that mean you actually saw a green U around me, around my body? I didn't even think to ask that, because when you're with T and Doe, physically, at least for me, and I think for many others, there was so much involved in just paying attention to what they said, and what they said was always challenging in some way. I mean, like in an enlightening kind of way, to where it was like really like sweet to the mouth, like candy, like new information, and it was such new information. Like, for instance, when they first said that all humans don't have souls, I was like, whoa. I mean, just like my brain was like twitching. And when they said that members of the next level were people, I mean, my brain was twitching with that too. A number of things, many things they said, caused mine, and I believe our brains, to need time to digest, because there were such unusual things to think about. And we see examples of that in the human kingdom all the time, where people can't imagine that there could be another Earth somewhere, or other humans somewhere, and then somebody introduces that to them, the next level, through the humans, that gets introduced through science fiction or whatever, because those are all tools of the next level that they can use to help humans gain more perspective of reality. And then it's like a seed. And those humans then in the future can start to think, wow, that's logical even. Just like there's many people that are atheists, which isn't a bad word by any means. Doe said it can be a good step out of the religiosity. But it's got to be a step in order for that soul to move closer to the next level. But it can be like, saying that, like many atheists now believe that killing is primitive. Killing other humans is primitive behavior. And it's true, it is primitive behavior. But they don't, or some of them, don't want to realize that the reason that they came upon that understanding was because of all the lessons that were given by Moses and Jesus related to humans not killing humans. Okay, but they don't want. Some of them don't want to think that way because then they would feel like they were acting like the religionists, the Christians, with their limited views, not knowing that the Christians don't get it entirely. I'm not saying they don't get it at all. They do get it, some of them, many of them. In all degrees, they get it. Because in all degrees, they were their genetic strain and and if the next level was helping them and they were asking for help, then they were getting it in those ways as well as anybody that wasn't a Christian could be asking for help, a Hindu or a secularist, humanist, or whatever you want. Any label, it doesn't matter, because all paths lead to the top of the mountain. But you can only get off that mountain, which is the human kingdom, by having the midwives with you present to give you the keys, to be the keys, to represent the keys, to demonstrate the key. To please them, actually, is a big part of that. If we're not pleasing to the present incarnate older members, then we're showing that we don't recognize their mind for who they are, to the degree that we can understand that. So, like in the very old days, you showed examples that when the Lord or one of the Lord's angels, messengers, working for the Lord, came to deliver a message to a human that was prepared to receive that message, probably a student that was growing to take on more and more tasks, like to become an archangel, for instance, a captain of angels. Then they would say that they fell down on their face, which is like a way of, in a sense, like, for fright and awe and fear. But fear in that context is part of the mechanism that allows us to be open to what is greater above us, that does represent everything we can become, and does represent everything that is reality to us as being the originators. And so that is an awful experience, awful, full of awe experience. Awful doesn't mean like a terrible experience, although it's rooted to the same word. I mean, it's used as that way a lot of times too, because, well, I don't need to go into that anymore, but the word is taken on, some different meanings, that it's like always a negative. Like if something's awful, it just, tastes bad. But it may be the best thing for you, even though it tastes awful. So it's a relative consciousness and interpretation and understanding and realization. So let me look at now you can see Revelation 12:2 on my screen there. And I'm just going to read it kind of with the Greek words inserted already. So I'm not going to go through all the Greek options because it takes a lot of time. And most of the people watching this have internet access, so they can go look up each of these words and figure out, because it's available online for free, and And I provide the ones that I think were most pertinent. And so Revelation 12:2, and then when I put a word in single parentheses, that means that it wasn't recorded as being in the original transcripts, the original manuscripts that were written on papyrus. So, and they may be totally right, because I'm not a professor of the Greek and the Hebrew language, so I don't know that well on how to assign gender to certain words, and I know like some words are both genders, maybe even many words. There may not even be gender, but there might be, well, I'm not sure. I'm not going to say right now, because I just don't retain a lot that I learned about the languages. I get mixed up between the languages sometimes and what was included. I know grammar wasn't included in the Hebrew language, and so everything was running together. But you just knew how it was organized to maybe a line at a time, but it was read also right to left as opposed to left to right. And so, you know, when the people put it into English, they probably, in many cases, did that reversal. But I don't know if they did it 100%, because sometimes they may not have known how to do it exactly, because sometimes they had to fill in the gaps too on some of the words that were not legible and things like that. So, or were said in a certain dialect that they didn't know for sure what it meant, the Aramaic or other dialects, you know, Hellenistic Greek, which was a combination of Hebrew and Greek. So, anyway, I'm not enough of I'm not a theologian at all, so I can't talk specifically to that kind of thing. I'm just going to say basically what has been given to us, because I think what's been given to us is 100% adequate. Tiendo said that we could trust that what was in the Gospels was accurate. So like the people that are saying that, you know, it's been changed so much by everybody are wrong. It has been changed, but what's changed most from the Gospels are the translations. I mean, not the translations. Some of the translation choices, yes, but the interpretations on those translation choices. For instance, saying something was figurative rather than being literal. Like when Jesus said that it would be harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than for a camel to go through the eye of the needle. And many Christians are saying now that the eye of the needle was an archway, a stone archway in the city of Jerusalem. And the camels, when they were loaded with all their gear, had to get down on their knees and be pulled through that archway to get through that. But when you look it up in the Greek, you find out that it was actually talking about a sewing needle. So it was literally, so, I mean, Jesus said it, he didn't say, well, I guess he did say sewing needle, but I don't know if he did or not. You know, I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine that he would have said needle. Well, at the same time, Jesus was actually talking both languages, because he was talking to different grade levels of potential students. And he was also talking to those that were not going to be students at all, because they were so programmed to be against anything he said that they were going to find fault with everything he said. And so, so some things he said figuratively or in parables so that people would not understand to the full degree that they could understand, because that full degree would make them think he was crazier than they already thought he was. So the next level, like Tiendo said, has its own cover-up. And that's exampled by the way Jesus had two different degrees, at least two different degrees of teaching. So anyway, so Revelation 12:2, and she being, she referring to the woman that was clothed with the sun, the moon on her feet. The generator of life is what woman actually means. And also midwife or wife, in the sense that she's not the one that's being married to the groom. I think that's the first time I really saw that way. Because the student body all become wives to the groom. And if you have trouble with the gender I'm talking about, you know, I know there's people now that, you know, they have another word for gender, so that there's no he's and she's, and some people are very, very particular about not being called a he or not being called a she if they don't feel like they are a he or a she, and wanting the respect of other people, calling them by some other term for the pronouns. And I have to say that I think that they're taking it to an extreme, and they're complicating everything. Not that they don't have the right to relate to whatever gender they want to relate to, and the right and opportunity to change their gender if they can have it done by drugs and operations, or just by cross-dressing or whatever, you know, however ways they want to do it, whatever degrees, for fun or for pleasure or for sake of a sense of who they are. They're all identifying with themselves as the vehicle by doing that. And that's not a bad thing, but it's something that needs to be outgrown. And what Doe said about homosexuals was that they had overcome some of their gender consciousness, or maybe all of their gender consciousness. I think he just said they have overcome their gender consciousness. So, but they haven't overcome their sexuality if they're still having sex. So, I'm not putting that down. I know I sound like I'm making it trivial. I'm trivializing it. I don't know if that's the way to say that. Because I'm fully in supportive of whatever people want to do when it doesn't hurt somebody else, physically and even mentally. But hurt mentally is a relative condition, because some people can say that my son or daughter joined the cult and they're hurting me terribly by doing that, and not communicating with me because they joined that cult. But see, that the child, once they grow into adulthood, at whatever age that is, which could be earlier for some and later for others, could potentially be, I mean, you know, in some countries you're an adult when you can have a baby, you know, so a woman, and they marry you off right away. You're 14 years old or even 12 years old. As soon as your vehicle is past puberty, then some of them want to marry them off for whatever reason. Or you can go into the army when you're 17, I think. Or even maybe earlier in World War II, I don't remember exactly. But, so, I mean, those are then considered to be adults, even though they have a lot to learn still about life, but they also may have a lot that they know already, because they're the next generation, and they can potentially glean from all the positives of the previous generation. And then especially when the next level is incarnate. So then those that are growing when the next level is incarnate have even more opportunity, I believe, to shoot up. Because Tiendo said that this was also an accelerated time period for all levels of life to grow through, as opposed to the slow periods of growth before they came incarnate in the 1970s, or even before they had a relationship with the human kingdom directly, more directly in the 1920s and 30s, referring to T's relationship with the vehicle she planned to take, and Do's relationship with the vehicle he planned to take. One was in the 20s and one was in the 30s. So, which they weren't ready to come incarnate into until civilization had grown a whole bunch. And they did a lot of prep with the student body as well, to prep all those vehicles by giving them soul deposits in the 50s and maybe, well, 40s probably. Yeah, I think 40s, 50s, which was the time of the fifth trumpet sounding. So when the keys to the bottomless pit were opened, so that's when the space aliens came. That's when also the next level sent their members to sacrifice their existing next level infant vehicles and perhaps an adult vehicle or two or more. I never heard of the reports. I don't know how many there could have been, but so and she being to hold as a possession, the definition of being is to hold as a possession of, to be able, accompanying. So she accompanying, which I put in caps at that time. I didn't do that throughout the whole book, but I thought that was important. And also being, be returned, and she be returned with, which also has the meaning of the Greek en, of among, for the sake of, give self wholly to, because of. So she being to hold as in possession of, to be able, accompanying, be returned, with, among, for the sake of, give self wholly to, because of, child, with child, and also for the sake of child. So she was coming to take hold of her vehicle, to possess her vehicle, to be able to give self wholly to her offspring, her child, the individual that was in her next level, a spirit womb, if you want to put it that way. I mean, invisible womb. The earth being the womb. The human kingdom as the womb. So that she was coming to be among us, and for the sake of that child. And I said a little more about it down below. Let's look at it. It's not too far. So I don't want to take all day with this, because people can get my book. It's freely available on my blog. Just ask me for the address and I'll send you to it. I'll give it to you. Coming, middle voice of primary verb use. Yeah, see, I went through all the details in the book. That's why the book's so big. I try to take apart every word that seemed to have relevance, and most of them do. I mean, they all do, actually. The next level, don't thought that the disciples were taking notes. And John might have been taking notes, maybe every time he awoke, and I don't know how long it took. Or maybe it'd be hard to imagine that he remembered everything from his dreams. I suspect they were through dreams that he was given those images, and with all the detail that he was able to then write down. But maybe they're just pictures. And maybe, I don't know exactly how he got them, but he got them. And he wrote them down. And even though Tiendo didn't say that we can trust every word in the Revelation, in the book of Revelation, they did refer to many things in the book of Revelation. And they did say that all the prophecies in the book of Revelation will be fulfilled. So I think unless, and there's many things in the book of Revelation that show what Jesus was saying. So you got those correlations, and also everything in the book of Revelation has a lot of correlations to what Moses wrote down. And even though Tiendo said that Moses' teachings also suffered some distortion, maybe a lot of distortion, so that you couldn't count on everything that's written in those 5 books, those 5 books, the Torah, as being absolutely true. Jesus said that, referred to Moses' teachings as valid to adhere to, especially the lessons. So whether somebody was stoned to death for picking up sticks on the Sabbath, that's a little hard to imagine when you have that they were going to have students do that to somebody when they were being taught that a human shouldn't kill a human. So I think that was one of the biggest ways the Luciferians came in and inserted some aspects of that story. Maybe he was, the individual maybe was reprimanded, and maybe told that if they continued that behavior, they would die, because many of those lesson steps came saying that the penalty for this is death, but didn't say when you would die. But it also might be possible that because Moses was the one that was making an exception in this case, that that he was feeling that it was his instruction to allow that human to be stoned to death. If it was stoned to death, might not have been stoned to death entirely. It's not that clear, but it's possible that it could have been exactly the way it was said. So I'm not trying to get out of that, like some people would say, yeah, you just want to have an excuse to believe in God. Well, I mean, if that's the only thing that's questionable, one of the only things that's questionable, that's going to be the line between believing in the next level or not, then you just want to not believe in the next level. So just don't believe in the next level. It doesn't matter to the people that believe in the next level. But I would think that it'd be in your own best interest to not teach other people that there is no next level, because now you're messing with the next level. Because you don't have that judgment. Somebody that thinks there's no next level does not have that judgment. They don't know what there is beyond this planet. They don't even know what's on this planet. They don't even know how our bodies are made, or how the genetic structure comes about. Nobody does. So how can you say absolutely anything is so? Except by the evidence that is now logical to some, that this was all designed to be exactly the way it is, except for the responses. The responses weren't designed. Although the next level knows how the garden grows, and they know when they insert the human space, the Luciferian space alien fallen angels, that because of what they sunk to and fell from and lost in their recognition of the reality of the next level, are going to sow the seeds of doubt and mistruth and misinformation and lies and deceit for anything, so that people will believe anything except for that simple truth that we were created with and designed, and the whole planet was created and designed to be a hothouse to grow souls in, to become members of the next level, potentially, over time. So, okay, so she came accompanied with and also like to be able, for the sake of the child, right, which means that she needed to be incarnate to do her part of the task that needed to be done incarnate. Like Tiendo said, actually, that a number of times they said, if we didn't need to be incarnate, we would not be here, because this is a snake pit, we don't like it here. I'm not going to talk about that anymore because I've talked about it in many videos. Okay, so and she being with child cried, travailing in birth. Travailing in birth. Notice that travailing is in parentheses, meaning that it wasn't in the original manuscript, but I have to correct myself from before, because sometimes the words that I put in parentheses were words that were bringing more accurate understanding to the Hebrew or the Greek word that was used, that was put in here. Because the way the languages worked. And so, travailing in birth, I don't remember. I should have had a different designation for that when I looked up birth. I mean, I can look at it here. Where is that? I'm doing what I said I wasn't going to do, but I guess I keep doing that. But I don't really want to, for the sake of time, I don't really want to go through everything so quick that I'm not doing a thorough job in Tiendo's mind. And of course, I don't know if this would be a thorough job in Tiendo's mind, or if I could do more or less. So I'll take a chance on a positive, which was a saying that Tiendo always said. Take a chance on the positive. So give a little more information, and that's taking a chance in my mind on the positive, because of the fact that so many of our words have been tainted to where they don't mean what they initially meant. And that's happened with all the translations, I believe. So if you look at birth, you see wait, I gotta switch you over to Strong's. So where it says travailing in birth, notice travailing is in black. So that's why I put that in parentheses. But if you look at birth, it says to experience the pains of parturition, literally or figuratively. So in this case, it's figuratively. And then it does say travail in birth, travail in, to experience the pains or to travail in. Which goes back to Odin is a pang or a throe, especially of childbirth, pain, sorrow, travail. And sorrow is the same word as suffering, I believe. So, anyway, so, and this is an and that's in there, so it's, because I don't know if you would say, and pain to be delivered, or pain delivered, it's tortured, pain, toil. Toil, to me, stands out as the best word here for that. Toil, in other words, it's work. It's hard work. And it is torment to some degree, but it's not like someone's tormenting you. Because, as Tien Do said, that the irony was that their frustration was designed by them not receiving more information, so they could recognize more of their next level mind, as opposed to just having a limited amount of their next level mind allowed to enter that vehicle, and then having to pull in each little piece as they saw the student body was ready for it, which they had various ways of determining. A lot of it had to do with their own frustration and wanting to move faster. So they would be pulling for what they could do to help the students move faster, and then they would be given lessons to give to the student body, and then those lessons would put the student body to the test. Like one time we were in the campgrounds in Wyoming, I think it was, or northern Colorado, where we did most of our camping in the north part of the country, and in San Antonio and Austin, and the Cave Without a Name area near Bernie. We were also camping there, but I remember this from camping up in the Wyoming area, that we moved our whole camp, which consisted of, I guess there were at least probably 60 of us, maybe even 70 at that time, and there were 2 to a tent. So we had like 35 tents. And then we had a big green tent for that we used for the Nutrilab, where we would do all our eating at that point, because it changed from what it was before that, when we used to eat in our own individual tents and cook our own food and even buy our own food sometimes. But and then we had another big tent it was like an old army tent that was even bigger than the green tent, and that was used for meetings. Because the green tent had like tables set up where for people to sit at, and also had the stoves that were working off of gas, natural gas, propane. You know, the big industrial, like we had 4 or 6 burners. And then all the pots and pans and all that stuff, that was all in the green tent. So, it was a pretty big operation. We had generators dug under the ground, and then we put boards on top of so that they weren't so loud, so noisy to the camp, and then we had porta potties, and they had separate tents for the porta potties. Sometimes we had a porta potty in a 2-person tent without the people there, of course. But the porta potty was inside the tent. But at one point, T&Do bought little tents that were the shape of an outhouse, little, like one room, just enough to keep the weather off of you and the bugs off of you when you're using the facilities, when using the porta potty, actually. And then it was once a day or twice a day if needed. Those porta potties, there was a crew that emptied those porta potties into a hole that they dug, deep holes that we dug. We had a crew that did that too, and so that we were burying all our waste. And the paper waste was was burned. So we didn't bury the paper waste, I don't think. Although maybe we did. Or maybe it was just, I don't remember exactly if we did or not, but I think we didn't, because except for the the waste from the solid waste, that went in with it because it would smell too bad. But the waste from liquid waste from females mostly, even though the males also sat, but there was no instruction. I'm not aware of an instruction for females to use toilet paper or not. The males didn't have any instruction to use toilet paper, like to catch the drips. But all were instructed to sit when they had a liquid or solid waste. That's how the terms were used also, it was solid and liquid waste. And our body parts were plumbing. That was the word they used, to disassociate from all our background on all those thoughts and ideas, and not stimulate memories and things and responses to terminology. And also because it also was using their mind. And because if they gave us something to say that was a different word, and we used the old word, we were referring to our old mind, because we didn't get it from T&Do's mind. It's that literal that you end up bonding with their minds. So, so I was saying, so if it's travailing in birth and pain to be delivered, well, isn't birth is the Greek word tiktu, which means to produce from seed as a mother, a plant, the earth, literally or figuratively, bear, be born, bring forth, to be in travail, to be delivered. And yet birth is a different word. So you got two different Greek words that don't even seem to have a relationship. So that makes me think that this first one, travailing in the experience, travailing in the experience of toil. So she cried, travailing in the experience of the task, of the work of the task, of the frustration with the task. And, or also, was pained, had the toil to deliver, to bring forth to bring forth the birth of her child, her son, the individual that she ushered into and birthed into the next level, who was the individual that was occupying the body named Jesus, and then became the individual that was occupying the body named Do. And before that was Moses, was Elijah, then Moses and Enoch and Adam. That started the experiment. Anyway, so that's enough probably on that. Now here I just got through 2 verses again. Jeez. And yet, I feel like I'm doing a better job each time. I don't know, maybe no one else thinks so, but so I'm not going to think that it's a waste of people's time to listen to it. If it is, then just skip over it. But I know that T and Do would have us, well, never mind, doesn't matter. So verse 3, Revelation 12:3, and there appeared another wonder in heaven. Whoops, did I not move this up? Or I went too far. How come that's not showing there? That happened to me last time too. I wonder why. Because I must be going too far down here. I can't change it now, I guess. Or maybe I can change it this way. Or this way. I don't know. I don't want to take more time and fiddling with that, but and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. Oh gosh, this may take me a week to try to go through all this, but well, I mean, there's so many links to this. I think I started on it before though, because I talked about crowns, I remember, in the past. So let me see if I can get through it quickly. Well, appeared is a visual appearance. The word optomome. And now it's saying another, but it also means else or different or more miracles or wonders, or one another, or and some and others. Okay, so it's another miracle that's taking place, wonder, or sign or token, because I don't think this qualifies as the same word really as applied to the older member T showing up in the flesh at all. But it is still a major event that is a type of miracle, because and that we marvel at seeing the whole idea of space aliens, right? I mean, think of how huge of a subject that is to actually embrace as reality among us, no less. I mean, maybe there's individuals now that are hearing this that thought it was common sense right from the beginning. I mean, I did, but I didn't have any, I didn't receive that information from the news media that I was aware of. I hardly watched the news before then. And I didn't study the subject. And I didn't read newspapers before I joined with T&O much, or at all, really. I can't think of when I read a newspaper. I mean, I knew the Vietnam War was going, but so I guess I did have access to some things, maybe television news, I don't know what it was. I wasn't a student of trying, or an activist then, even though I did go to a Vietnam demonstration against the war in Washington, D.C. when I was 18 or 19. But that was because my girlfriend wanted to go. So I went with her, even though I would have, if I hadn't got a large lottery number, I was already planning, well, I was already thinking I might go to Canada. I wasn't decided yet because I didn't have to make that decision. But my best friend was a year older, and he did have to make that decision. And he was fighting it. His parents had a lot of money, and they hired Kunstler, actually, the law firm, to get him out of it with a student deferment. And so that's how I was faced with it the most. A year before I was faced with it. I'm faced with the reality of it, of having to register for the draft. And I knew in my mind I wasn't going to go overseas to kill anybody. I knew that was certainly not going to happen. And I remember hearing stories about people acting like they were insane and being into drugs, and when they went to the draft agency, wherever that was, like in the city, to sign up, and other places probably on Long Island where this vehicle grew up. But so I remember all that talk, and I do remember that there were bombings, and actually one of my school chums, who was also a year older, was up in college and came back and told me about the bombing. And it seemed like I don't know if he had anything to do with anything, but he didn't say whether he did or not. But he ended up in Canada. I wonder why. I know, as a boy, he kind of led the way with taking apart firecrackers and M80s and cherry bombs, taking the gunpowder out of them and making our own little bombs. I mean, he did 95% of that, and I would just, be with him when he would set them off. He'd put them in like a pile of dog manure or something, and or we'd tie it to a record album, and then send it off into the light, and then scale it into what was a big opening for drainage, what they called the sump. Anyway, that was across the street from our houses. Anyway, so I don't know what happened to him. That's beside the point, really, right? But I guess a little tiny bit of this vehicle's history, that's all. Anyway, but this is a big sign, okay? And the biggest way that it's a sign is, that I can think of, is in Revelations 9:1, where it says that the beast would come out of the bottomless pit. Let me jump over there quickly because I'm not remembering it at this moment. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven to the earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. Well, it seemed to be describing like a volcano, right? And there came out of the smoke locusts, insects, right? Flying insects, which are like mammals. They say that many of the insects are descendants of the dinosaurs. And so they're types of mammals, to some degree, I guess. You know, I mean, not like a human mammal, but anyway. So out of the smoke came the locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. In other words, they could sting humans. And you know, in the abductions, there was examples of stinging humans, right? Because people would be mesmerized, or they would. It was like a dream, or it was like surreal, that they were led out of their house and taken onto a spacecraft and then prodded, stung. Okay, prodded. They would put some kind of tool down the plumbing of a male, and trying to extract sperm, and then they would have them have sex with somebody. Some of them would have sex with another being that maybe looked a little human, or maybe even looked a little reptilian, by some of the descriptions of the many abductions that took place that various researchers documented. I know of 3 researchers that did documentation on that. But Deerdorf and I forgot the other 2 names. Forgot that one right. Anyway, but so that could be the stinging. The power over and when it says to them was given power, that means that the next level wasn't stopping them from doing it. But they were doing what they wanted to do. Because what did they want to do the most? They wanted to generate new vehicles that they could occupy, and also have the influence over the Earth humans, that so that they could have some operations with them to build spacecrafts and find energy sources to power those spacecrafts so they could get off the planet. That's what Tian-Do said, that they wanted to do the most. And they also wanted to stop people from becoming members of the next level, because they resented being locked underground. They didn't want to be locked underground again. That's another reason why they wanted to escape the Earth. And that still continues with the big space mission from China, India, Japan, the EU, the United States. All have their different space missions. It's not just for understanding better the way the universe was created. That's sure, that goes hand. That goes. It's like one of those 1% truths. I mean, it's true. They would like to be able to see more of that, but that's not what motivates those big budgets. Just for the sake of understanding more? No. They don't know it, but directly and indirectly, they're influenced by the fallen angels, Luciferian, space alien, fallen angels, souls. So, and then it says here in Revelation 9:4, and it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. Well, it's interesting how all these terms can also be related to humans in the human kingdom. Because the way this is worded, it gives you the impression that that there are some humans, in this word men, which comes from which has a relationship to destiny, but it's also, it comes from anthropos, the Greek, and that means, like anthropology, and that means a human being, whether male or female, genetically to include all human individuals. To distinguish man from beings of a different order is the way that's defined. And I'm sorry I can't show you that on the screen right now, but I was using this other software, and the little box that opens up doesn't show the meaning there. But please go get yourself these programs. They're like $8 for this one, the Strong's Concordance one, and this one was actually free. It was called the Free Bible. I don't know if it's still free, but it's a really good resource. Primarily, these two are what I use the most, but I also use some online sources. Two different real primary online sources, actually 3 different ones. And I looked at everything. I could sometimes when I was really, especially when I was stuck. Where sometimes I was stuck for a week or two on one verse. So these individuals were, well, Tiendo said that the individuals that were abducted were not being protected by the next level. So there you go. I'm showing how what Tiendo said relates directly to the fact that only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads are going to be subject to the stinging of the scorpions. The stinging like the scorpions. It didn't say as the scorpions. Well, I mean, the word as also means like in every translation I've ever seen. Yes, as, like, even as. As, like, even as. And it was translated as 342 times, when 42 times, how 18 times. That's not even a list of translations here in some of these words, but they used them. Because, you know, it depends on the person writing these things and doing this, how thorough they are and all the research. About was also used in that sense. So, and actually scorpions, the name of a little animal somewhat resembling a lobster. That's all they're saying here. But it has a poisonous sting in its tail. That's the bottom line. And tail is interesting because it was said that Lucifer, you know what, I can't remember the exact word for it. But when I recap it, I'll look for it. But you can research the way tail is used, because it was like the tail was just like the way that, you know, humans used to say that they were going to get some tail, meaning they were going to have sex with a woman. At least that's what I grew up with boys talking about. Which is interesting that I mean, because it's the bottom of the vehicle, you know, where the tail is, the tail covers up, right, the lower extremities of the plumbing of the vehicle. So, so the influence of that part of the vehicle is what that's inferring by saying that the scorpion has a sting in its tail. It has to do with the reproductive system. That's how they're stinging. I already just talked about that. So I got a little confirmation of that by looking at the way that word was translated in different places in the when it was used in different places in the New Testament. So, which is always interesting to see. I mean, you know, I'm calling my book that the evidence of, but it's not the entire evidence. I don't know, maybe you could double it. I don't know how much more evidence you could find, especially when you know everything Tiendo said. So everybody who's listening to those tapes, you're going to see a lot of the things that I'm saying in those tapes. And if you ever see anything that I'm saying in the tapes, and please make note of it so that you can tell me that, you know, where it is. I'm going to start listening to those tapes myself a little more, especially when I'm driving around, so that I can look for the areas where I know certain thoughts exist. Because we do have the index to all, you know, the table of contents, so to speak, of the tapes that we do have. Of course, we're not going to get it all because the webmasters of the Heaven's Gate site are being like the Catholics, and they're holding back a whole body of information. But I know that we don't need that information. Need with a capital N-E-E-D. Because if we did need that information, then we must trust that Tiendo would have had Rick Odie have time to copy it all. But I think it also provides a test for all those who insist that we need it all, and are, you know, whether they can accept that or not. And it's also a test for those webmasters, whether they will ever provide it in the future. Because each day that they're holding it back is like withholding the truth from the whole, you know, all the individuals that want it. And why? They never gave me an explanation. I mean, I asked Mark if it was because of thinking that they may be, though it might have been talking about them in those tapes. And I was on the crew. It was actually just me and Soroti for a long time. Soroti was the primary, I was the secondary. And our task was to set up the tape recorder for the meetings. And Ligotti did it too, and before that, I know, and I think Glenn Odie did it later on as well. But for a long time, it was just me and Soroti. And we got instructions many times to, well, sometimes during the meeting, they would say, we don't want to record this meeting. And then sometimes they would say, during the meeting, you can shut the tape off for this. And then sometimes they would say, you know, we want you to erase that part of the meeting that talks about this and that. And most of the time, that was about somebody who we talked about who left the class, that they didn't want to be in there. So I don't think that's you know, of course, maybe Mark wouldn't believe that I know. But he could have also listened to them, or, you know, but that would be hard to do if you weren't wanting to continue to be of service in a broader way, or find out whether Tian-Do said in those tapes that they expected the materials to be available, which they did talk about. He did quote to me something that was said about how humans would twist the things that were said in the tapes. And yes, of course, that's what they did to Moses, that's what they did to Jesus, and that's what they're going to do now. That's what they're already doing now. It doesn't, I mean, there's already people that are talking about how T said that she could have healed her vehicle and she was certain about it, of the cancer. And since she didn't, they think that she was full of gas or full of whatever. I don't remember what they said she was full of, but nothing came true that they said. This one guy or a couple people that have been on my blog for years say that nothing they ever said came true. And one of them, at least one of them, listened to all the tapes, he said. But he couldn't tell me where that part was where T was talking about that. But I guess I could maybe figure out how to get close to it. But I'd like to know if anybody hears about it, so that I can hear the exact words T used. Even though she could have said that, exactly. And I know that it can also be true. So I'm not invested in being one way or the other. I just want to know what the truth is, so that I can actually address it in a truthful way with a fact. Because it's easy to make stuff up. I do it. I mean, I don't want to do it, and I don't try to do it, but I end up sometimes doing it. And fortunately, I think there's some that are helping me with this task, and they let me know pretty quickly. But I can't count on that, because they may want to test me to see if I keep on talking about that, or if I pick up on it myself before they say something to me. Or it may not matter in some cases. Or they may think it might be of value to somebody to hear my little slant on something. I don't know, you know, if we want to think about the next level accurately, we need to think that everybody is unless they have a specific instruction that if something is said to jump on it, and they would know what those things are, that the liberties, so that people can express themselves, their own free will, that may have a value to people, like myself, have a value for me and a value for people that are hearing this, are not automatically going to be blocked, or you know, I'm not going to be notified by it, or they might choose to have somebody listening to this who's listening to those tapes find it and bring it to my attention. You know, it's that way, instead of, like, you know, saying no, that's not accurate, which I can't say that they ever said that to me, but I certainly got that feeling many times. And then it says, still with that Revelation 9:6, well, it said that they were going to be tormented for 5 months. But months actually has two meanings, and one is affirmation period. So, because I don't think it was just months. 5 months from the 1940s and 1950s. Also had to do with a new moon appeared. That was a festival among Hebrews. But month is the word used. But like I said, the Greek word men is also affirmations. So it'd be 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. So maybe that all started in the 30s. Well, it would be when Tiendo started in the 20s and 30s, right? So that would be the five seal period starting from the 20s and 30s. That's what I think that means. And that's the first time I actually kind of arrived at that. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but I've gotten close to it in that way, but I didn't know where the 5 started. But I'm pretty sure it wasn't just 5 months that they were given the power to do abductions. But then again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there was just 5 months. And then all the abduction cases came out of that. So, because I have to admit, I haven't heard about abductions recently. New ones. And I do know that there were contactees, I think in the 30s, maybe the 20s. Well, I don't know if they were contactees now. But I know that in the Hitler things, there was, in the 30s, maybe the late 30s or maybe the early 40s that was. It might have been the early 40s when they started to build flying saucers. Which, you know is not going to come by accident when they were just barely getting off the ground by then. Which they did, they did build flying saucers, but they couldn't get them to go very far off the ground. They were using, I think, fans and stuff like that. Like the blades were underneath in one case. So we lifted up, but they couldn't keep it up very long, I guess, is what I read about that. So I think I'm going to go back to this here, even though I'm kind of exhausted already. But let me see if I can just go through this a little bit, and then I'll just recap it and add some more later. To Revelation 12:3. There appeared another wonder in heaven. Now, this heaven, see, we don't know exactly what time period this is talking about either. But the Luciferian space aliens, well, there's that word in. So it's about heaven. So it's another sign about heaven would be working as well. See right here, about. Or after heaven. In other words, after heaven would be like after they were in heaven. It could be said that way. There's another wonder after the nature of heaven, or after the, because after doesn't just mean what follows, it kind of means resembles. So let me see even if that word resembles is part of this. Between, for the sake of, give self wholly to, herein heaven, toward heaven, mightily heaven, because of heaven, upon heaven, outwardly one, quickly heaven, heaven, shortly throughout heaven, toward heaven, under heaven. Under heaven is interesting. There's another wonder under heaven. Because they were thrown down. The Luciferian space aliens. See, Lucifer, the dragon is Lucifer. But potentially all the fallen angels. But I think it's Lucifer because the 7 heads, I think, are, and the 10 horns are like 17 of the associates that were with Lucifer, that he influenced to fall. And I believe Doe said that the 7, when he said a third of the angels fell, I think in the next verse maybe, Doe felt like that was talking about the fallen angels. And that, so this might be actually giving you a number to how many fell, which I think Enoch also talked about. Now I don't know if dragon is meant in a singular way, but great red dragon, red is fiery, fire-like dragon, flame-colored, red dragon. Purr from especially lightning. And remember, Lucifer was the being of light. That's what Lucifer word meant. It meant angel of light, I think, or light one, or light born, or something related to light like that. He was also considered to be the bright morning star at one point, in some cases, which may have been a distortion with the way Jesus said he would come as the bright and morning star. Or come might have been appeared. I'll go look at that again. But and appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold. Behold also is see. See, but also lo as imperative to behold a great. Great is big, very wide application. A fearful, awesome, exceedingly great, high, large, loud, mighty, sore, afraid, strong. X to years, or strong in years, or mighty to years. Which, you know, all those terms can actually apply to Lucifer, I think. Because he was not, Tiendo said that because he was working for the next level, on a next level spacecraft, doing a certain amount of elementary next level tasks, like observer. They didn't say what those tasks were, but I think being a watcher, according to Enoch, which Jesus referred to Enoch indirectly through Jude, this is where the reporting came from, which I tend to believe, because T said that Doe was Enoch, and Enoch walked with God, and so Jesus referred to anybody that was taken as having come from the next level. So that's part of my reasons why I put stock in what Enoch said. But you can go back to the book of Enoch, and I think you might be able to get a count, because he even provided names, I think. So I don't know if there were 18 total. But having 7 heads to hold, in other words, having hold on 7 heads, having possession of 7 heads. In other words, being in command of 7 heads. What that would indicate, in other words, convincing. He convinced 7 heads. He diseased 7 heads. He created fear in 7 heads. He had 7 heads following him. He followed with 7 heads, or followed him. He kept 7 heads. In other words, he's going to law lie. He lies with the 7 heads. Seven is actually the word 7, but a 7 in the Old Testament was considered to be the amount of times you would take an oath. Like, for instance, if you were going to become a Nazirite, you would take the Nazarene oath. And that oath was to swear off of drinking the fruit of the vine, grapes, grape juice, I believe, which may have been fermented. I don't know for sure if it was, but I imagine it might have been, because Jesus drank wine. So there's no reason to believe that in the Moses camp they didn't ferment grapes into wine when they had the grapes. And they did go looking for grapes at least one time that I'm aware of, and the grapes were very large. So to preserve them would be to ferment them. So, but then they of course made you loopy. So I guess they were starting to instill the discipline of having a clear head. Especially when you're with your older member. And that as T and Do didn't allow us to drink alcohol, although we tested it one time, and though when T had us have a Christmas celebration, or it might have been a Christmas after T left her vehicle, that we had a Christmas celebration, but we had a Christmas celebration while T was in her vehicle before that, so Do wasn't starting something new by having that. And that was the last time I was aware of having a Christmas celebration. And he brought in some wine, and we had like a half ounce of it. We had a shot glass, but it was only like half full, I think. And we each had that. And Do said he wasn't going to do that again because he didn't like the way it made his head feel. He was experimenting with it himself for the first time after, that was 1985 or 6 or 7, or 85 or 5 or 6. Well, I guess maybe the end of 1985. So anyway, so it might appear that these 7 heads have made their oath to the Red Dragon, the Luciferian. Who might have been an older soul than the rest. So he was more advanced, and so he was able to mislead the others. But if they were able to be misled, then that needed to become their lesson. And the next level would have helped them after that, as T and Do said, to recover. But apparently they didn't. And the next level gives many chances to the recovery. Just like they give many chances, like Jesus was asked how many times to forgive the brother. And he said something about, Moses said something about 7 times, which I never did research that. But then Jesus said 70 times 7, which is a way of saying, probably a number that you're not going to be able to really add up and count and keep track of. But would be an example of how many times the next level might forgive us. Forgive us our trespasses. Remember that Lord's Prayer? That had meaning, even though it became into a repetition, that Jesus, a vain repetition that had no meaning anymore, hardly any meaning. I can't say no meaning because some people may still find meaning in it when they feel like they're talking to God and they're saying that, and they're understanding those words to the degree that they're capable. So that would be wrong for me to assume that because they did become stock prayers, that reduces them, because Jesus also said not to do that, not to make them into vain repetitions or make them meaningless. And they do reduce the meaning by saying them over and over again to where you're not thinking about each word as you're saying it and what each word refers to consciously. Though, I can't say that you wouldn't have a certain amount of meaning from even the general idea of each word. I guess I said that already. I got myself a little spaghetti there. And, well, heads comes from seizing. There's 7 that were seizing. I have to go look up this word captu, but I'm not going to do it right now. Taken hold of, okay? In other words, but in this context, this is also how the beast is defined. And so yes, the red dragon has taken hold of these 7 individuals, or 7 groups of individuals, but he's not, but the kind of hold that the red dragon wants on these 7 heads is for them to take hold of humans, take control of their heads, to get them to fulfill their agenda. And there's 10, which is the word 10, or teen, horns, can be like any form of teen, can be used in that way. Or maybe 10 teen, should be 1,000, I don't know. I don't know how that, I think 10 is pretty literal probably there. And see, I was also adapting this to the G7, which became the G8, and then they got rid of Russia and became the G. But even when Russia was added, well, they were G8 for a brief time, and then they took Russia out of the G8, so they became the G7 again, just in time for this prophecy to be fulfilled, which is in Revelation 13, and also Revelations 11, and a few other places. Revelation 17 talks about the beast and the bottomless pit, and just like Revelation 9:1 does. And the 10 horns is from the hair on the head, primary car, the hair on the head. And that made me think that that was like a lot of people. And maybe it could even be considered well, I'm not sure exactly what the several interpretations, of course, that can apply. But I associated with the 10 horns being the G10, the financial ministers of the Western countries, Western so-called civilized first world nations, by their own decree. And how they added Switzerland, but they decided to stay as the G10, and they added somebody else too, but they're still staying as the G10, even though a G20 developed as well, which is another mix of individuals. So So the fact that this is tied into the hairs on the head, to me, says that they're the outgrowth of the heads. That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. They're the outgrowth of the heads of the G7. The 10 horns are the outgrowth. And horns also being a military thing. And it's actually used that way in the... So, maybe talking about the 10 biggest military powers on Earth, the human military powers. Christino did say that the Luciferian fallen angel space aliens were riding herd on humans, the leaders in other countries, in many countries, or a number of countries, and maybe all the countries, because they want the most influence they can get. And so they go to the individuals that rise up into those power positions and help them get more and more control, so that they have control over the money, the budget, and then what technology is developed from that budget, and the manpower for that implementation of that budget. And that and 7 crowns around the heads would be an indication that a crown was a physical vehicle that 7 of them were given, were by the next level. That were which I believe were infant vehicles, because an adult vehicle can't fall in the way that, I don't think can fall in the way that these fell. Because that's the gap, that's the improvement that T said was going to happen when she got back, was that the bar was going to be raised on who could get into the next level. And that, to me, means who could become an adult. But I don't think he had an adult vehicle when the Luciferian space aliens, the 7, fell. I don't think even Lucifer had one of those next level adult vehicles. Christino indicated that once you're an adult in the next level, you don't really have the capacity to go back into human behavior. But the infant vehicles had the capacity to reverse metamorphosis into human behaviors. And Doe said that regarding Adam, when he reversed metamorphosis, that's where the example came from, that I'm just using now, that it happened pretty quickly. Didn't take a long time. And I think he was talking long time in terms of human time in that context. I could be wrong. So, this is where it says then in Revelations 12:4, and his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven. Or a third part stars heaven. And cast them to the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Okay, I covered a lot of this already. The period to this question here is then, and she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. So this is where the child is birthed to the throne. And that's one of the primary reasons I know that the woman cannot be the church. Because the church cannot give birth to anybody else. Birth is a very special arrangement. In the future, they'll be able, if they keep on going, if they graduate, so they're not a child anymore, and that would mean that they become an infant in the next level, then they're starting to get close to being able to give birth, but they need to become a captain of angels. They need to work in an angel capacity after that, after being an infant, to where they're trusted and have lots of experience as messengers or whatever else other tasks the next level gives them to do. Many tasks, different kinds of tasks. And then they need to graduate to becoming a captain of angels. And then they need to graduate to becoming a father, becoming an older member, before they're going to be able to give birth to anybody else. Even though all along that, they can be participating in the birth of new members. But the older member would be the one that was birthed to the throne, which is just taking place at this time here, during this third trimester. So that was like a third trimester also for Doe. First trimester was Moses, second trimester was Jesus, third trimester was being who he had grown to be, Doe, as bringing forth a ruling all the nations with a rod of iron, which that ruling of all nations with a rod of iron happened after his birth. But they're not talking about the time frame here. They're saying who was to rule over. So that's whose duty, whose necessity, whose possibility, whose probability, who is all about ruling all nations with a rod of iron. Who after that will rule the nations with a rod of iron. Nations with a rod of iron. That means a strict standard, an unbending standard. Because yes, members of the next level are flexible, but to become a member of the next level is not flexible. No, to become a next level is that narrow, wide is the gate that leads to destruction. No, wide is the path that leads to destruction, but narrow is the gate that leads to eternal life, Jesus said, something to that effect. And that's because the next level wants to bring you through that tiny birth canal that is going to make your eyes single, like Jesus talked about, so that your whole body is filled with next level mind, light, from your older members. I'm going to end with this one. I'm not going to be very thorough with this one. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath prepared a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. The only thing I really want to talk about here is wilderness, and how I'm saying that that was when we went to Wyoming. I'm saying that the Vitavu rustic, no facility camping area which stood for Earthborn. That's what Vitavu means in that native tongue. Whatever that native tongue was, I forget the name of the native group, tribe. But meant Earthborn. That's exactly where we went to start our overcoming, as Tiendo said. And that's where a number of individuals showed that they weren't ready, and so Tiendo separated them from the bigger group. 18 individuals, or was it 19? I think it was 18 individuals were separated from the larger group of what was originally like about 100, is the term that Do used. And a couple of those actually returned to the group years later by very unusual so-called coincidental circumstances. They were looking for the group. And one ran into a member working at a hospital in Amarillo, Texas, just by chance. We had never lived in Amarillo before that. But he had a good idea, a good thought, to go look in Texas. So he started at the furthest northern point. Maybe that was the strategy. Or maybe, the next level, T and Do, or next level helpers. I mean, it wouldn't be T and Do because they were in their vehicles. Those are the names of the vehicles they took and woke up in. But there was next level crew of individuals helping T and Do, including, I'm not going to talk about that, but so they could have seen that this individual was still desirous of being connected to T and Do in his prayers and in his petitioning to the next level, because we were taught to project our asking as far away from the planet, beyond the stars as we could imagine, and as far away from the stars as we could think, and to go to the highest being we could reach, and ask our questions of that individual, and ask for help from that individual, and that would end up going to the right place. And humans that pray to God can also go to the right place. They just don't know it's going to the same place that T and Do are from. Some of them may know that now. But those that end up knowing T and Do personally, or knowing their teachings personally, I think I can expand on it a little bit like that, because we have we have everything in the Beyond Human tapes. We know what they look like from the exit videos also, and what they said in all those, and we have all the audio tapes of what they said, and we have a few first-hand witnesses that are talking. If there's more than a few, then I just don't know about them. And then, so that's a form of presence, so that when you have the presence, then you can talk to T and Do directly. Ask help of T and Do directly, I believe. That's why the instruction was that to become a disciple, one must be willing to stand up for T and Do, no matter what happens from doing so. And believe in everything they said, and believe that they're from the kingdom that created all the planets and all the life forms on Earth, on those planets. And we were in Wyoming and Colorado and in a camping environment for about 3.5 years. Or 3 years, maybe it was. From 1976 to approximately 1980 is the way I looked at it, when we actually got jobs before we even left the campground. I got a job in Kmart in Provo, Utah, because we were living in the woods, in the mountains, just south of Provo. But that was like months or weeks even before we moved into houses. First in Colorado. In I think it was Aurora. Yeah, I'm going to keep it closed now because I'm probably over 2 hours already. I wasn't going to go to sleep this late, but I guess I am. So, good night.